if we could deal with number 16, which is East Midlands devolution deal. And someone else has got.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to take that report. Nothing significant to add to the report. Members have previously been appraised of the development of the devolution deal through the various emails and updates that have been provided. And as members are aware, this is an issue which the District Council has had very little detailed involvement in. That's partly because of the process prescribed by the government and the fact that this was only to be focused upon negotiations in discussions with the upper tier authorities. But clearly, now that the in principle deal has been presented and agreed by government and those upper tier authorities are going through a process of consultation, it is important that this council determines what its position is in terms of any ongoing discussions and dialogue that does take place. So I don't intend to go through the devolution deal in any great detail. It's there for members to digest and see what's on offer. But I think the key thing for this council is to determine whether we want to be around that table when discussions are taking place, particularly around the issue of district and borough representation. And you'll see the recommendation in the report is that I am advising council that I think it's good that we would support such a situation, because to be quite frankly, if we're not around the table, then we can't exert what limited influence we may be able to were we to be around the table. So nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Councillor Atkin.
Yeah, I'd like to propose and the recommendations as set out in the report, so I'm happy to move it on, Chair.
We got a seconder? No. Councillor Morley, you seconding? Yes. Councillor Gamble.
Hi, it's just I mean, we're going to be agreeing here to sort of appoint 2 people from this council to take part in, from what you said, exerting influence. Can I ask what influence have we exerted over the process so far, and therefore what level of influence do you expect to exert in the future?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The honest answer is we've exerted very little influence, because this council and every other district and borough council in Derbyshire has not had any active say in the discussions with government. That has been exclusive to the upper tier authorities. However, having said that, the upper tier authorities have offered representation for district and borough colleagues from Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. The chief executive from Chesterfield represented Derbyshire, and a colleague chief executive from one of the Nottinghamshire boroughs represented Nottinghamshire. So we have been kept informed, but in terms of actual influence on the content of the deal, we've had very little direct. But I think the key thing moving forward is clearly, given the fact that the deal does provide for district and borough representation around the mayoral combined authority table, it will be for the individual districts and boroughs to determine who that representation should be, because there will be 2 seats from Derbyshire districts and 2 seats from Nottinghamshire. And the intention at the moment is that that representation would be nominated from one of the existing joint committees. Now, clearly, Councillor Purdy, as leader of this council, sits on both of the committees, which may well have a say in this, and that's why the recommendation 3 is outlined there, that we continue to have that representation in this forum.
Councillor Brown.
So have you had any idea about what these 2 people will actually be inputting onto? Have you been given any spheres of influence for district councils at all, or given any idea about what this will actually, what you'll be discussing?
Well, the district and borough representation around the mayoral combined authority will be non-constituent members. So the actual influence that they will be able to have will be determined by the mayor, should that be elected. So there is no direct influence unless the mayor seeks and gives that to the individual district and borough reps. But being around the table is still an opportunity for a district colleague from Derbyshire, or 2 district colleagues from Derbyshire, to represent the interests of districts and boroughs.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. As Paul Wilson says, we have had very little involvement in this process, and yet we're being asked to endorse the deal. I find that very, very strange. We have had no opportunity as a council to consider the deal, and certainly this evening is not the occasion for us to have the sort of in-depth discussion which I think the deal merits before, as an institution, as an organisation, we decide whether we should support it or not. What I would say is, by way of background to that comment, there's a lot of hype about this deal, which has been put out by the four main protagonists, and it is hype, and it's a one-sided set of hype. I could give you briefly a further set of information. We have £1.14 billion deal over 30 years. That actually equates in the East Midlands to £516 per head of population each year. York and North Yorkshire were allocated £610 per head. Tees Valley, £675 per head. Cambridge and Peterborough, £731 per head. And the West of England, £815. We got 516. Why do we think that is such a wonderful deal? It isn't. It's crumbs. And we're being asked to endorse a deal which delivers nothing but crumbs, and in addition delivers an additional layer of bureaucracy, expensive bureaucracy. Without any debate, I think we should reserve our position on this and not support recommendation 2 at this stage, without any debate at all. I'm not saying that we wouldn't support it if we discussed it in detail, but we simply have not had the opportunity to discuss that, and as I said, this evening is not the occasion to do that. I fully support recommendations 1, 3 and 4, but they are not predicated on us as a council, as an organisation supporting a deal which we have very little knowledge on, very little appraisal on. So I want to formally move an amendment to the recommendation that recommendation 2 is deleted.
Anyone seconding that? Councillor Gamble. Sorry. Okay, so we're debating the removal of number 2. Are we just going straight to the vote? All those in favour of the removal of number 2? And against?
The amendment's lost anyway.
The amendment's lost.
I was counting. Mrs. Morley's vote wasn't counted, although she was in the room at the point the amendment was moved.
So we go back to the substantive motion. I haven't got anyone else. I don't think I've got anyone else on my list. Oh yes, I have. Sorry, Mike, Councillor Radcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to paragraph 1.14, is it not true that, is it not the case that this is going ahead whether we vote for it or not? Therefore, you know, it's quite in order for us to take a position on this, because it's, at the end of the day, it's actually not going to affect it. We're just going to have to suffer the consequences of it. I mean, I agree entirely with what my colleague Councillor O'Brien has been saying on the financial side, but this has got a political perspective as well. Undeniable that it's a government-inspired project that they wish to put forward that quite possibly may further hasten the demise of this district council. I don't see that that we are going to get any well, we're certainly not going to have much of a democratic input on it, because we're neither being granted a meaningful vote nor a veto. We're invited to the table, but it seems to me very much as a sort of observer. We're going to be removed from the wider decision making. So no wonder there are no proposals to give the mayor, the elected mayor, any district council powers. It doesn't actually have to be given them, because as a result of this, we're simply going to have to contend with the consequences of this combined authority. But again, as Councillor O'Brien has said, the capital revenue funding sounds a great deal, but you can bet your bottom dollar that the Derby City and Nottingham areas, as well as the wider Derbyshire, are going to take the lion's share of this, and we're just going to have to try and get what's left, which will be very little.
Sorry, there's been a few questions raised. I don't know if Mr. Wilson had anything that he sort of wanted to clarify. It just, I mean, it.
Observer at those meetings, what the response has been. Derbyshire and possibly Chesterfield too. If they've actually been.
I think you. I don't want to prolong the questioning. I was asking Mr. Wilson the question, really.
Well, perhaps I can pick up a couple of points. Councillor O'Brien makes some very pertinent points in terms of the size of the deal on offer. And it's absolutely true to say that the deal on offer initially is less than that which has been offered to other areas. But I think the key point to make here is that this deal was done at some significant pace. And there has been a clear indication provided by government that this is the start, it's certainly not the end. And if one bears in mind the devolution deals that exist in other parts of the country, which are more mature, if you take, for example, the West Midlands, Greater Manchester, Liverpool, and the like, where they are now is not where they started from, because there's been further iterations and developments. And really, I think the upper tier authorities see this as an opportunity to actually bring power and influence and money down from the national level in order that they can determine priorities at the local level. But it's certainly not the end of the asks that they've got, far from it. But clearly, time will tell in terms of how that develops. In terms of the views of other authorities in Derbyshire, it's fair to say it's mixed. There are some authorities who are very supportive. There are some who are not. And clearly, you're absolutely right, Councillor Ratcliffe, whether individual districts sign up and agree to the principles of this deal or not, the chances are, subject to parliamentary approval and the consultation process, it will go ahead regardless. So I come back to the point, is it better to have some influence in the discussions that will take place rather than be completely outside of the sphere of influence? And I think that is where all districts and boroughs in Derbyshire stand.
Councillor Burfoot.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Shirley. Did I mishear? I'll go away again.
Sorry, I thought I have got Councillor Burfoot on my list, but obviously not. Oh, sorry. So where we got to? Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. We'll get there eventually. Yeah, I'm very disappointed with Vision Derbyshire. We're going to be the all and end all of everything, and it fizzled out to nothing really in the finish. And this devolution deal is even more dangerous, really, because it's eroding democracy completely away. Local democracy will be tattered outside of the table. The big boys will take over, and they'll take all the money, and we'll get the crumbs. And it's a small amount it being offered, isn't it, really, when you look at the other devolution areas, what they've got, it's nothing to celebrate, really. It's a disaster, really. And yeah, we've got to do our best to get near the table, but I'm afraid we'll be sitting at the side of the table dropping crumbs down to us. So my question is, where will this leave us? Paul, will it leave us without a district council eventually?
I don't have a crystal ball, but in terms of the legislation, all I can say is that it does have protections in place for district and borough councils, and no powers can be taken by the mayoral combined authority without the consent of the individual councils. That's in the draft legislation. So from the point of view of sovereignty, then as currently proposed, then there is no risk to Derbyshire Dales or any other district and borough council. What happens in the future, clearly none of us know.
Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I like the analogy from Councillor O'Brien that it was crumbs, and crumbs, what a disaster. I've tried to read through this report, and really it's just chicken food. That's all they're throwing at us. You know, it's scraps of this, that and the other with promises. Well, promises without guarantees. Nowhere does it guarantee anything. I do agree, and I agree with Paul when he talks about if we want something out of it, we've got to be part of it. And I do agree with that analogy. But I can't see anything to fight for in this. Yeah, I mean, just look at the Boundary Commission and the money spent there. I mean, to save this council, what, 25 grand? How much did it cost for that to take place? And what benefit has it? And look what they're doing now. They're putting in a new tier of local government, which is going to be precepted because it's mainly housing, transport on a strategic level, and some for adult education. And the other long list of things is going to have to come from a precept, for the mayoral precept. And that's an unwanted another tier of government. To take part and be part of this, I'm afraid you've got to have a strong leadership to fight for your cause. And we look back over the last decade or so, especially, where I know Councillor Rose did his best to fight for more money from local government, but it wasn't forthcoming. And in latter years, it's been non-existent. You know, people aren't listening to us higher up the chain. We're a small council out in the sticks, and nothing for the man on the street. There's nothing in this at all. And I think, like it's just been mentioned, the democracy of this is a shambles. And we talk about localism. Well, a few years ago, we had a paper on localism, what we're going to do. It's just fizzled out. I don't think the government know what localism is. And that's bringing it decision-making down to its basic level. You know, and it's just a shambles. I'm sorry, but I have no confidence in the leadership, political leadership of this council to fight on that level for us as a council. And I'm not going to support that tonight because I think it's just not worth it.
Sorry, Councillor Hobson, was it?
Councillor Fitz, can I just challenge that? Against the political leadership of this council, when Councillor Purdy's worked so hard with this, with Vision Derbyshire moving on, you know, I really think it's unacceptable to say that.
I'm sorry.
Councillor,
I'm sorry, Chair. I've just got to come back. That every single meeting, we're told what Councillor Purdy has done at other meetings. Where is the fact and the bare bones of it where the local people are actually benefiting? Not much at all.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Localism. I think the Localism Act actually worked the other way.
It's centralised. It certainly did in planning matters, where it took a power away from the local planning committee and gave it to the planning inspectors. This is another attempt at centralisation of power, and it moves power away from local authorities like ours to towards beyond the county to a sort of regional body. Now, if you've got a strong leader at a mayoral level, like Andy Burnham, for example, in Manchester, the Manchester region, you can do very well, but you need a strong leader to stand up to government, even at that level. £38 million. So how does that compare with county council revenues? £1.39 billion for Derbyshire County Council next year. Probably the same for Nottingham. 300 odd million pounds for Derby City Council. So 38 million, addition to several billion pounds worth of revenue coming into the East Midlands already. That's not worth fighting for. That's not worth having. It makes no difference at all, because a centralised administration will add to the cost, as Councillor Flitter says. So where is the benefit? The benefit will come only if we get good, strong leadership. And where is that going to come from? Are we going to get it from our own councils? Who is it going to be? Who is going to be the mayoral candidates for this new venture? That's what we have to consider. There are genuine advantages. I agree in transport, in business development in the region, and perhaps in housing. I'm not sure quite how housing fits into that. There may be some other infrastructural advantages as well, but I'm not sure there are going to be advantages in social services or I don't think in housing particularly, and in a lot of the work that we do in terms of clean and green and providing local services as we do, and which we do as I believe we do very effectively. And so thank you for the officers for doing that. So I look at this as a chalice. It could be poisoned. It could be a very nice thing to have in terms of development of the East Midlands, but it is a concern, and the 38 million is a pittance. It's crumbs. It's not worth having.
Thank you. I have on my list Councillor Buttle, Wayne and Murphy, and then I think we need to move to the vote. I'm sure you've spoken before, Councillor Gamble. Okay, Councillor Buttle.
Thanks, I'm still on questions. I'm not even on debate yet. I'm sorry.
You will only have one say.
Right, okay, I'll give it one go then. Right, I'm a believer in travelling in hope. If I wasn't, I'd have given up years ago. You know, like we've got to do what we can with this. We've got to get what we can out of it, and by being supportive of other politicians, other people, other organisations, try and get something for ourselves as well and for our citizens, residents. Andy Street, Andy Burnham, they've both done really good work. They made a lot of difference. I've no idea who we're going to get. I suspect it's somebody I've never heard of, which, you know, I hadn't heard of Andy Street before, but I knew about Andy Burnham. We're going to get a transport strategy. We're going to get various bits and bobs of framework for climate change, for planning, what have you. We're going to get a devolution, so we'll be a little bit further away from central government, which is an utter shambles. So I'm generally in favour. I'm going to vote in support, but I do have a question. It was to do with the recommendation that failed to be amended by being deleted, that the council endorses in principle support for the East Midlands devolution deal. I support it kind of in principle, but I'm a bit dubious. Did someone make an assessment as to this was the best way to approach a negotiation and sitting at a table, that it was better for us to look cheerful and happy, or was it a decision that we were going to just sit around looking miserable and that wasn't going to do us any good? You know, like, did we make an assessment? Did someone make an assessment as to why we were going to vote for recommendation 2?
Mr. Wilson?
Well, in terms of the scale of the deal that's on offer, clearly I wasn't round the table which dealt with that particular issue, and the upper tier authorities in determining that a £38 million a year deal was certainly worth having is a decision that they've clearly taken. I think from the point of view of the district council, if we think about what our corporate priorities are around affordable housing, around improving the economy, in principle there is money which is going to come down from government to the mayoral combined authority level which will influence those. And my point is that if we're not at the table, putting our bids in, fighting for the Derbyshire Dales, how can we expect to get anything out? Even if it's crumbs, crumbs might be better than nothing. And we're facing a situation whereby public finances are going to be severely challenged over the next few years. So coming back to the point that this is very much the start of the deal discussion, and the pot will hopefully, as reflected by other combined authorities, increase over the years. It's a question whether the council wants to be around that table or not. You don't have to be, and that's why the recommendation is in the report for you to determine whether you're prepared for your officers, political representatives to participate in this dialogue. But
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely agree with the taking part in the dialogue. I just want to know why we're deciding to go in there saying, yes, we're in favour.
It's a question of principle. I'm not asking council to approve the detail because we've got no say or influence over the detail. The detail is the detail as published. So given that you're not able to influence the content of the deal in any way whatsoever, it's a matter of principle. Do you want to be around the table or not? It's really as simple as that.
Okay. I think, can we just,
That's just
I'm very
not the
conscious.
answer. That's the question is not being answered.
Well,
the question isn't about whether or not we want to sit at the table.
Sorry,
the question
Councillor
is,
Buttle, we've got a limited amount of time and we've got some people to speak and they might not get the opportunity if we have a dialogue backwards and forwards. Okay. Councillor WAIN.
Thank you. I'm seriously concerned about this because I just feel that I might be a pessimist with this, but I see it as the Sheriff of Nottingham and we're going to be the peasants in the suburb. That's how I foresee it. And it's interesting what Councillor O'Brien said. He put some sort of meat on the bones of how there is differential between each individual area. And is that levelling up? I think, you know, regardless of where you live, you know, there should be some sort of consistency to it. But I've got a couple of questions that I would like to just ask the Chief Executive, if that's possible. How is what the deal is compared to the amount of money benefit to each individual person, if you know what I mean? Is it the same? You know, it's like in the west of England where they're getting £800 or £700. Is their mayoral pot bigger, and how is that worked out? That's one question. And are you happy to offset the crumbs, if that's what it is, against the increased financial burden to our residents from the extra layer of bureaucracy that this will bring? I'm just thinking of the police commissioner and how much that now costs to pay, and how much it costs compared to what it was years ago. And I'd question whether or not there's a great lot of benefit from that. Thank you.
I think the second point is a political point. I'm not in a position to really answer that because clearly the situation regarding any precept would be agreed by the mayoral combined authority and the representatives that sit around the table. But in terms of the size of the pot, they are different per head of population across the whole of the country. And that is the methodology that government has adopted relative to the needs, the demands of those particular areas. But as I go back to the earlier point, the pot, as is now, experience suggests that those pots do get increased over time. To what level, clearly nobody can predict.
I said I was determined to get the meeting finished. It is now almost 9:30. So what I want to do is move to the vote. You put up your hand last, and I'm sorry. There's two. I'm not discussing it. We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That was carried. Okay, sorry, it is now 29 minutes past. I'm sorry to the two individuals that didn't get the chance to speak, but I think it's time to go home. Thank you all very much.